Hi, I'm Karen, and this is the Mental Health Hope You're Not Alone podcast. This space is all about breaking the stigma of mental health, where we'll share personal stories, helpful online resources, and meaningful insights, all with one goal in mind: to remind you that you are not alone in your mental health journey. Hi there, and welcome to the second part of the anxiety portion of the Mental Health Hope You're Not Alone podcast. In this episode, we're going to talk about tools that we can use in order to help our mental health and maybe even try and heal from it. I have an article here that says the top 10 best anxiety tools for helping cope with anxiety. These are daily things, and if you have suggestions, you want to drop them in a comment in Discord, YouTube, and let me know. I think that would be really great. I would love to know what others are doing to help them with their anxiety, because sometimes what I do is just sleep, and I know that is not the right way to go. So number one here is psychoeducation, and that just means that it is important to normalize anxiety and initially provide information about the brain's threat response. And normalizing anxiety helps reduce a client's sense of shame and feeling that there's something wrong with them. And I think that's really great. We are all dealing with anxiety, and there are different stories that people are going through with respect to anxiety. And being able to educate people on those different aspects and hopefully breaking the stigma along the way is absolutely a great idea. So hence this podcast. Like I said, there's a lot of reasons, but that's one of them, is hopefully breaking the stigma and getting that education out here. Going through all these different articles and talking about the symptoms, both with mental health and physical health with respect to anxiety, and maybe the other combination with PTSD and so on and so forth. It's just something that I'm experiencing. It's not at all something that is coming from a doctor. Like I have absolutely no medical background with respect to anxiety. It has just to do with my experience and solely my experience. So next one here is anxiety monitoring. This talks about keeping track of the experience. And that is something I did actually for a while write down to my boss what I was doing with respect to the anxiety itself and things that I was going through with anxiety. The main physical symptoms that I have are being nauseous. I think that's number one. Vertigo, and also having a migraine. And it's not a migraine. Like, I've not been diagnosed with migraines. I just call it that because sometimes it affects my eyes, and being able to have the movement, it can be very uncomfortable. With the journal aspect of it, I think it's really important to get that information out there. And so I wanted to read just a few things that I was doing at the time with respect to my anxiety journal. And so my anxiety journal here, I'll just do a really quick entry. It says it's the end of November. This was, I think, in 2022, 21, something like that. A Tuesday, I had a meltdown due to an issue at work. And I did say, but I'm not going to say now. Started out with a migraine, then it changed to vertigo by the weekend. The following week, I got a note from my doctor that I could telework for 14 days. And that was just mainly to give me a break from the anxiety, because my anxiety was built around work. And so first time back to work, after those 2 weeks, I felt nauseous the whole time I was there. The moment I got home, I felt hungry, proving that work was the cause of my anxiety and the physical symptoms. Called in sick for the next 2 days, had a panic attack before that my second time going in that week, and had another panic attack in the early morning. This was December 17th. New medication that I was taking at the time made me sleepy, so I could not take it before going into work. However, I think there were times, if I remember right, we actually did change medications again. She gave me something that was like an as-is that I could take when I felt really anxious. And I did take that for a while, but it did not help with the level of anxiety, and it just wasn't a good thing at all. So that's one thing. Here's another day. Couldn't sleep last night. Virtually counted the hours down, so I had to sleep. Must have fallen asleep at some point because I woke up right before the alarm. Didn't feel good. Felt nauseous. Got up out of bed with vertigo and hit the wall across from my bed. I remember that. I remember when that hurt. Started to get ready for work, but decided it was too dangerous to drive into work. Upset I missed the holiday party again. So that was 12/27 of whatever year this was. I'm not going to go through all these because this is a really long journal. But this was towards the end of that year. Says, feel a little bit better. Slight headache. Had a long conversation with a couple of people at work and what had been going on. So I felt good about discussing that with them. Woke up and felt super anxious with a headache. It took the meds and waited. It took a while for it to come down, but still had vertigo and a headache. Called in for the third time, calling in for that holiday, and I put a little upset face because I was mad at myself for doing that. Spent the day in bed, took meds again by the afternoon, heading to bed soon as my headache is coming back, missed work. And I'll just go into one more. It's basically the same thing here, but over the past couple of days, certainly yesterday, I became more and more anxious for my work on Friday. Spent the night looking at the clock, becoming more and more anxious to the closer it got to the time I needed to get up. I started to get up, and vertigo was back with a headache and nauseous. Here we go again, called in, not safe to drive. So you can see there, I mean, it was just an awful experience with respect to just all the physical symptoms that I was dealing with at that time. It was just awful. And I still deal with that. Like, I just had what I would have considered a migraine this past week because it knocked me out. I did take off a few hours from work, and I tried to go and sleep it off, and it just wasn't working. Finally today, after a week and 2 days that my headache is gone, I actually feel somewhat normal today, which is nice, which is good for a change. All right, so let's move on with the things. So anxiety monitoring, yes, absolutely. That is something that you can do. I don't journal anymore, but I like to do recordings. It's just much easier for me to do it that way. And again, you can always, if you want some type of transcript, both Google and Microsoft Word, both transcript recording, so you can easily download transcript if that's something that you want. Understanding maintenance cycles, psychological formulation can help clients understand maintenance cycles of anxiety, how their anxious thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are linked to keep anxiety going. For example, cognitive behavioral therapy situational formulation cycle can be used to part of psychoeducation. And it talks about the situation, the thoughts that you have during that situation, the behavior that you have, the emotions that you have, and then the bodily sensations and how all that is linked together based on the situation. And that's exactly something that I went through. I had this interaction with this person, and the reaction and the behavior I had to this person is because of not who this person is, but because of how it triggered an interaction that I've had previously with work that caused my anxiety, if that makes sense. Number 4 on the list is building a toolkit of strategies. And one of the things that was told to me, and I'm so not good at doing this. Do as I say, not as I do. I say, but somebody in my family recommended, if I'm really anxious, I can't remember exactly if it was like doing 5 things. And it's really to get your mind off of what is causing the anxiety. So it's like the 5 things are like, I see a doorknob, and you physically get up, walk over, and touch that doorknob. I see my cute little doggie sitting in her bed. So you get up and you walk over and you go pet your dog, and so on and so forth. And you do that with 5 things, and it's supposed to help lower your anxiety. And I have done it before, but it's something that I tend to not be good at. So I'm terrible at the tools. I've been trying lately with my Be Normal campaign. If you want to know more about that, check out episode 1. But basically what I've been doing is just telling myself to be normal. And what I mean by be normal is my normal. Not at all what normal is to what society thinks, but what is normal to me. So that was the top 4, and it says 10 effective anxiety management tools. And so let's just reiterate. So the first 4 was how to cope with anxiety and worries. So that was the top 4 that we just did. Now these are the effective anxiety management tools. So number 1 on this list is controlling breathing. And that's something I think is really good. I actually, there for a while, was doing really well at this. And I would sit on the edge of my bed, close my eyes, and just try and concentrate on my breathing. And I will say it did help. And so I do recommend that. Next one here on the list is progressive muscle relaxation. and it aims to relax the muscles to ease the bodily sensation of anxiety, such as muscle tension. I have to tell myself to drop my shoulders, otherwise, I tend to tense them up and bring them up towards my ears, which then really affect my shoulders and become very, very stiff and uncomfortable. Calming imagery, and for me, this is going on a walk with my dog, and I tend to, especially during it's now winter, right? So during the fall when trees were just absolutely stunning, that absolutely loved taking her out on walks. It was hard because I'm not physically fit right now, but yeah, it was really just, oh my gosh, the trees around here were just absolutely stunning. So I would consider that. So this is talking about imagine your mind in a calm, safe place, such as a beach, forest, a familiar place, and that soothes the anxiety response and distracts from the anxious thinking. And for me, it was actually physically getting out and seeing it versus imagining it in my head. Distraction, you can distract your brain from anxious thoughts by refocusing on another activity. Again, for me, that was actually going out for a walk. I can sit in my anxiety and stew in it, and if I actually get out and physically do something, that tends to help quite a lot with my anxiety. I don't do it as often as I should, but it really is a good thing. Next on the list is thought challenging. It involves identifying evidence for and against anxious thoughts, and I can see that as something. I actually have not been one that has done that, and I don't really have a lot of experience with it, so I can't say as to whether or not it works, but at least it's on this list here. Compassionate self-talk. That is hard. I have the most negative mind with respect to myself, and it's really hard for me to say positive things to me, so that is not one that I can relate to, but I suspect that it works based on the fact that it's on this list. Worry time involves allocating specific worry time, 5 to 10 minutes a day, and give yourself a little bit of time to worry, and then end your worry time and move on. Behavioral experiments and graded exposure. These involve facing your fears by reducing safety behaviors. And I understand the point of this. However, and maybe you have to do it multiple times, but for me, I have a lot of anxiety about going into work. Even though I absolutely love my job and I love what I'm doing right now, I still have a lot of anxiety about going into work because my anxiety is centered around past experiences with work. And going into work is trying to break through that anxiety to get there, and I was doing it and continually doing it, and it never got better, to the point where I had to make some changes at work to help reduce that anxiety. And so I totally understand what they're trying to do here. It's just not, at least not so far anyway, it's just not something that's worked for me. But that doesn't mean it can't work for you. Go forth and prosper. I think it would be really good to try. No hurts to try, right? Just go out and see if it works. Exercise, yes, that's something that I tend to try and do with my dog. We try and go on walks, and I will be honest, I don't do it enough, but we do try to go on walks and get out there, and we're trying to now increase our distances together, and it takes time, but we can do it. And then sleep. I have no trouble with that. Sleep is probably one of my most favorite things to do. And I actually recently asked my counselor if being addicted to sleep is a thing, and I quite honestly can't remember if she actually told me yes or no, but it feels like it because I have been addicted to things before. Like, I used to smoke cigarettes, right? So I understand what it means and what it feels like to be addicted to something, and you tend to have that pattern, and you tend to put your life around what you're doing with respect to that addiction, and you will change your life to accommodate that addiction. Like, for example, we'll just take smoking as one, and I'm like, okay, if I have to be at work at 6 o'clock, then I need to get in my cigarette at 5:30 so I don't smell when I go into work, and so on and so forth. You just go through your mind with respect to that. I don't smoke anymore. I haven't smoked in years. The last time I had a cigarette was in January of 2010, so been several years. But for me, with sleep, it's very much the same in that I will I will do whatever I can to make sure that my sleep is the priority. I'll be like, okay, if I'm going to go out and run errands and I want to be in bed by 5 o'clock, which is true, I tend to sometimes be in bed at 5 in the evening, then I need to do all these different things for the getting into bed at 5 before I get to 5. So, like, my whole world revolves around getting to bed. And I'm trying not to do that. And again, it's part of my Be Normal campaign. I didn't used to do that. I don't even remember what it used to be like with respect to sleep. But, like, my whole world didn't revolve around it. And it does now. And I need to not do that. I do enjoy naps. I've always enjoyed naps. But I don't need to revolve my world around getting to bed. So it's just weird. But sleeping for me does help with anxiety. It also helps with my depression quite a lot. Here, next in the article here talks about 5 helpful grounding tools for adults, mindful breathing. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is what I was talking about. This strategy that helps you connect to your environment. It involves naming 5 things. So yeah, this is what we were talking about. And I've done this before. You go out and you actually physically go over and touch the things as you go through the 5 different things. And I will say it did help me. I just don't do it often enough. Grounding object. It can be helpful to carry a grounding object such as a stone or a fidget toy. And I did used to do this several years ago. I used to have something in my purse. I used to carry a coin. I could not tell you where that coin is now, and I didn't really realize at the time it was anxiety. Ground through the feet. That was something that I started doing when I would lean off the side of my bed. I would put my feet on the floor. Place your feet on the ground, focus on a sensation, this connection between the body and the ground. And yeah, I do agree with that. And body scan, bring your awareness to each body part. I've not done that. I tend to not put the time and effort into it, which is so terrible. But I'm trying to do better. I'm starting with my Be Normal campaign, and hopefully I can work my way up to other things, because the person that I read their experience with anxiety, they're tired of feeling this way, and this is exactly how I feel. I've been saying that back 2018 and before, that I used to do all these things. I used to have a social life. I used to go out to concerts with friends, and granted, I don't live in that town anymore, so the socialization I have with where I'm currently at is much lower because I just don't have a friend base necessarily here. But that shouldn't stop me from going out and enjoying things. I don't mind doing things by myself. But one thing that I can do, or one thing that I feel with respect to not wanting to feel like this way anymore, on the flip side, it's that I miss me. I miss me. I miss the person who I used to be. I miss the person that... Oh, my light just went out. I miss the person that used to be that person that would go and be active and would be able to do different things. And it's hard to not be that person. And so I'm trying my hardest to get back to who that person was by doing various things that I used to do and trying to bring those into my current world. And so far, this article continues to go on, and I'm not going to read all the things. I could make this recording extremely long, but it continues to talk about things in your youth, how to measure anxiety in therapy, screening and assessing tools. But the main focus that I wanted to bring up with this in this article was the grounding tools for adults. I think that's really important. And then the top 10 things that anxiety management tools. This whole idea of anxiety is, although I've been dealing with it for the last 6 years, it's still very new to me. And I'm hoping with this podcast together, we can go through it and understand it a little bit better and find tools that work for all of us. I think it's very good, or very important that we tend to do that, because it's important to heal and find, even though I will never be the person I was several years ago, I can find the new me and do that with all these tools. One of the things I want to talk about is trying to use nutrition as one way to cope with anxiety. So I have an article here from the Mayo Clinic, And the article name is Coping with Anxiety, Can Diet Make a Difference? And this is not necessarily something that I've thought about. I always think about nutrition and eating well to affect your physical well-being, but not necessarily your mental well-being. And so I wanted to talk a little bit more about this. And back when I was really active, I was also very into nutrition because I had to be. I was working out multiple times a week, and I also was racing a lot, so I had to be really aware of what I was putting into my body so I would be able to race and do well. And when I say race, I'm not going to say I'm going to podium and be in the top 10 by any stretch of the imagination. Just getting across the finish line was always my goal. But I had to make sure that I was eating right enough to do that. Let's talk about this article here. This is, again, I said this is from the Mayo Clinic, and let's read the first paragraph here. It says, anxiety symptoms can make you feel unwell. Coping with anxiety can be a challenge and often requires making lifestyle changes. While changing what you eat won't cure anxiety, it may help. And I think that's really interesting to even think about. So that's why I wanted to bring this article and go through it. But it lists a bunch of things here that we could try, and I'm going to try to do this and see how it makes a difference. And so the very first thing here on the list is eating a breakfast with some protein. And I actually do this. One of my favorite things to eat for breakfast is sausage. And I do get turkey sausage from Walmart, and they've got a wide variety of different ones. Like the ones I have now actually have like a maple flavor to it, but there are others that you could get. I tend to not eat the pork sausage. I love it, but I tend to not eat that just because I know the calorie difference and the fat content is different for both. And so I tend to go towards the turkey sausage instead. But it says here that eating protein at breakfast can help you feel fuller longer and help you keep your blood sugar steady. Really, that's the ultimate goal, is to keep your blood sugar level, at least according to my nutritionist. I by no means have any nutrition background. I just know that based on my experience that keeping your blood sugar at a steady level is what helps with staying healthy. Anyway, it says that also means that you have more energy and you start your day, which is really great. Next here talks about eating complex carbohydrates, and that's something I try to do for breakfast. Is I like to eat oatmeal. I tend to eat the sugary kind, so I'm going to probably have to find something that's a little bit better for me. The same idea was the protein. It does keep you fuller longer, and so you're not feeling hungry, before you're ready for a snack or maybe even lunch. It says eat complex carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are thought to raise the amount of serotonin in the brain. This can have a calming effect. Eat foods rich in complex carbohydrates such as whole grains, includes oatmeal, quinoa, whole grain breads, and whole grain cereals. It says stay away from foods that contain simple carbohydrates such as sugary foods and drinks. And I also say the another thing that I really do enjoy eating is grape nuts, and I like to put a banana on it. But the thing with that is you have to put some kind of sweetener on it, whether it be real sugar or fake sugar or sugar substitute. And we'll go into that a little bit later. But I do really enjoy grape nuts with the banana. It's one of my favorite things. Another thing I do enjoy eating is, I call it a parfait, but it's yogurt with granola of some kind and then mixed with some kind of berry or fruit. Oh my gosh, it's so good. But again, the kind that I get at Walmart, I do like to get the kind that's just lower in fat. I tend to sometimes get the Greek yogurt, but not always. Haven't really acquired a taste of the Greek yogurt. I know it's been around for a while now because it's really good and high in protein, but I tend to go towards the lower fat. But the problem with that is that it tends to have a sugar substitute in it. So trying to find that balance between trying to eat healthy and not having a sugar substitute can be kind of difficult. This talks about drinking plenty of water. It says even mild dehydration when the body doesn't have enough water or other fluid can affect your mood and make you feel more anxious. And I'm not sure if I'm good or bad at this. I have a bottle here. This is a bottle from Walmart, and they've got a ton of different flavors. This one is strawberry, and they've got a ton of different flavors. It's carbonated water. And I really like it, but it also has a sugar substitute in it. I'm trying to actually steer away from that right now. And again, like I said, we'll go into that a little bit later. But in the meantime, I'm trying to drink, and don't laugh, but I bought this jug at the grocery store, and I don't know, they're like a couple bucks. They're really cheap. But I bought this, and I'm going to try and drink this instead. And it's just regular water. And it's just, I understand that it's in plastic, but I just don't like the water that I have here where I live. And so I tend to buy the bottled water. And maybe at some point, if I really decide to really go all in, I may get a filter or something at the house. But for now, I'm going to be drinking the bottled water. And even for a while, I didn't even like that because I always could taste the plastic. But nonetheless, it's better. I think it's better than the sugar substitute. So I'm going to be trying that. Limit or avoid alcohol. And this is something that I do. I actually don't drink a lot of alcohol. I used to drink more regularly when I was younger. If anybody's in their 20s and 30s, they understand that you can go out to a bar till 2 or 3 in the morning, wake up at 6 and go to work the next day on a Saturday or whatever. And I just can't do that anymore. I'm now in my 50s, which is really hard to say and a bit shocking. But I just can't do that. And so I tend to not drink anymore because I just don't like the hangovers. And I don't like wasting an entire day sleeping, trying to get over that. Sometimes it's multiple days. If I've had a lot to drink, I could be napping for almost a couple of days. I just don't want to do that anymore. So I tend to not drink alcohol as often as I used to. But it does say here that says the first alcohol may calm your body, but as your body processes the alcohol, you may feel edgy. Alcohol can affect how well you sleep. And I will say that. I tend to go to sleep quickly when I drink alcohol, but then I tend to wake up a lot during the night. And so you just don't, for me anyway, I just don't get a well-rounded night's sleep. Goes on here to the list that says limit or avoid caffeine. And this is something that I actually do. I have not been drinking caffeine for about I guess it's over 20 years now. But right around 20 years. Back in, I don't remember what year it was, 2005 or 6. I used to drink a lot of Diet Dr. Pepper, and I mean a lot. And because of that, my dentist at the time was saying that because I was drinking a lot, she felt that something that was in, and honestly, I don't have a soda in front of me, so I can't tell you what it was exactly what ingredient was in the soda that she didn't like, but there was something in there that she didn't like because she thought that it might be affecting my gums. And so it was then that I started drinking the flavored water from Walmart. And I will say that when I did drink a lot of Diet Dr. Pepper, I drank so much that it was a lot, like 8 to 10 cans a day. It was ridiculous how much I drank. And the amount of, because I was drinking so much, it did affect my sleep. I would go to bed, let's say at 9 o'clock at night, and I would not be able to really fall asleep until 10. And sadly, I never put 2 and 2 together thinking it was the caffeine, which I should have, but I didn't. And it wasn't until I went off of the caffeine and not drinking the sodas anymore is that I realized that I was sleeping better. Like if I would go to bed at 9 and I would sleep, I'd fall asleep pretty soon after that. It made a huge difference with me sleeping and sleeping well. I haven't had any caffeine since then, which is interesting because of how addicted I was to it. Because I drank so much, I did go through somewhat of a small, minimal withdrawal. I think I had a headache for a couple of days or something like that. But other than that, I was able to get off of that, and I haven't had any since. With respect to drinking caffeine, sure, chocolate does have caffeine in it. Occasionally, I'll have chocolate, but not real often. But it says stop drinking caffeine at least 10 hours before bedtime, which that's a long time before bedtime. That's probably why a lot of people drink coffee in the morning. And then it says don't drink beverages that have caffeine. Caffeine can make you feel jittery, nervous, and more anxious, and also can affect your sleep. Just like we said, I know it affected my sleep. Good, but I was also drinking a lot too then. It says pay attention to foods that you're sensitive to. I think this is really interesting, and I would love to do more research on this because there's a lot of conversation about like gut health and how things are digesting in your body, and maybe things aren't easily digestible, and because of that it causes weight gain or bloating, just overall not good for your body. And so I would love to really, there's actually, I hear there's a test out there that can kind of tell you what foods are good for you and what are not, and I would love to be able to do something like that and do test, because I think it would be really interesting to understand what foods my body can't handle, and then maybe avoid those and not feel as bloated or overweight. It says here that certain foods and food additives can cause physical reactions that are not pleasant. These physical reactions may lead to shifts in mood, and these shifts can cause irritability and anxiety. And then it says try to eat healthy, balanced meals. It says healthy eating is important for overall physical and mental health. Eating lots of fruits and vegetables, and don't overeat. And it also may help to regularly eat fish with high omega-3 fatty acids, such as salmon. And I personally do not like salmon, but I do like tuna, and that does have omega-3 fatty acids in it. Something that I've been doing for 20 years, because I will say 2004, at the time I lost 30 pounds by trying to eat right. I wasn't even really exercising much then. But that was 20 years ago. I was like in my late 20s, early 30s, so a little bit different metabolism when you're younger. But because of that, I lost like 30 pounds, and so I started eating 3 meals a day with 2 snacks. So I would have a breakfast in the morning with something that had like oatmeal or something that would make me feel fuller longer. So I'd have oatmeal, couple sausage links, and then a fruit. And then like at 9 or 10 in the morning, I would have some kind of snack, whether it be like a yogurt or vegetables. Keep in mind I was eating really well during this time, and I've kind of gotten away from that, unfortunately. I still eat that often, but I don't eat correctly. And after the snack, I'd have, of course, have lunch, and then I'd have a snack when I got home from work, and then a dinner later on. And so I would try to make my dinners. I would also try the snacks that I would have would also be healthy. And so I'm going to try and get back to that. I still do that, but I'm just going to try and make the choices more healthy. It's really hard to do that when you're sad and depressed and you're anxious. I tend to not go towards the foods that are healthy for me. I have a terrible relationship with food in that, and I think this is a lot, I would say maybe worldwide, but especially with Americans, we tend to celebrate with food, or at least we celebrate. Let's go out to dinner. I got a promotion, or for me, I eat food when I'm not doing well and I want to make myself feel better. I'll order some not so great food to have delivered to the house, and I tend to look for something that may be greasy or fatty or sugar. And my goal is to try and steer away from that as best I can. If I do order something, and I want it to be as healthy as possible. I'm also going to try and do the 3 meals, 2 snacks. And then on top of that, do something with respect to just overall, just being active. I was active many years ago. I've had a few ankle surgeries that have stopped me from being able to be as active as I want to be. But I'm going to at least try and get out with my dog as much as I can. And I know she loves our walks. And so I want to be able to do that. But we'll see. I'm no promises. I am not. This is something I want to do, but you know what? If I fail today, I can start over tomorrow, which, by the way, I have failed today. I did eat yogurt this morning, not realizing that it had a sugar substitute in it. So now that I know, I can't have that yogurt. And also, too, I accidentally had a sip of my water earlier because it's just a habit. It was sitting here. I drank it. So that's why I now have my jug sitting next to me, too, because it wasn't here earlier. One thing I'd like to talk about is dry January. And if you saw the reel or short that I did earlier, I was talking about dry January. And earlier I kind of alluded to it about the sugar substitutes. And so, like I said, one of the things that I drink a lot of is this water here. And this flavor is strawberry, but this is from Walmart. They've got a ton of flavors, and they're all really good. Problem though is that they have a sugar substitute, and so for dry January, which normally has to do with alcohol, and I don't drink a lot anymore, so I figured that let's do something that I actually deal with on a regular basis, which is eating a lot of sugar. I have such a sugar craving that I decided that I'd like to not get rid of, but not eat a lot of sugar for the month of January to see how it makes me feel. And I did do this last January for 2025, and I did feel better, and I didn't feel as bloated, and I felt like I had more energy. And so I'm doing it again, and I'm doing this also with other coworkers that I have. I think there's about 19 of us that are doing this. And we all filled out a form that asked us what are we going to do for dry January, and about a third of us are doing no sugar, which is great because it's always good to have somebody to kind of help you along, understands your struggles, and can help you be accountable and things like that. One of the things I am doing is the no sugar, but also I'm not doing the sugar substitute, which is going to be, I think, even harder because there are a lot of things that have sugar substitutes. Like, for example, this morning I thought, well, I'm going to try and be healthy, and I decided to have a yogurt with some granola, which I love, by the way. Throw in a little bit of fruit, and it's yummy. It's one of my favorite morning breakfast things. But I realized after I ate it that it had a sugar substitute in it. So I'm going to have to steer clear of that for the month of January and maybe do something like a Greek yogurt, which I do enjoy. I just haven't really developed a liking to it as much as the lower fat kind of yogurt that I currently have, especially the vanilla. That's really yummy. But failing one day doesn't mean I'm going to fail the entire month of January. I'll pick myself back up tonight and try again tomorrow and not eat the sugar substitutes. But I really want to do this, and here's why. So I do have a nutritionist, and she and I were talking about doing sugar or not having sugar for the month of January. And I had asked her that I'd heard that sugar substitutes can sometimes cause sugar cravings. And she said yes, that it does, and it does so on a molecular level. And I do want to say, again, I have no experience with this. I have no degree, no certificate with respect to nutrition. It's just something that I have been learning about for a long time, and I'm going to try and incorporate in my everyday activity because I'd like to be more healthy. And main reason is for health and fitness, but also if there is an anxiety aspect to this as well, I'd like to do that. But anyway, back to my nutritionist. I had asked her if this sugar substitute, especially the drinks that I have, are maybe why I have sugar cravings. And she said yes. And it's really on a molecular level as to why that occurs. And the reason is that she says if I'm craving sugar and I have something to eat and I eat a sugar substitute, that it does not help with the sugar craving because the sugar substitute and the sugar are not the same, and it will not necessarily help with the sugar craving because it's not the same on a molecular level. So she basically is saying that because I'm craving sugar and I'm trying to basically lie to my body and tell it that it's eating sugar when it's really not, that sugar craving never goes away. And so I thought, well, why not give it a try for the month of January? If I'm going to be doing no sugar, why not also do a sugar substitute to see if that helps with the sugar cravings? And so I'm going to be doing that as well. I think it will be a little bit harder for me to do the sugar substitute than the sugar because I tend to not have things in the house that are sugary unless I order it and have it delivered to the house, which I tend to do pretty often. But nonetheless, I have a lot of sugar substitute things in the house. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out over the month of January. But join me, if you will. That's why I'm bringing this up, is because here we are, January 2nd, but you can start any day. And I'm going to try for the month of January to give up sugar and give up sugar substitutes. Because I really am hoping that it helps with the sugar cravings. Because I have an enormous sweet tooth. So please join me for a dry January. It's been an interesting journey so far. And I want to thank you for being here. This is episode 2 of Real Health Hope. You're not alone. I appreciate you spending your time with me as we go through this journey together. The next episode will be in 2 weeks where we will discuss depression and do a very similar deep dive in depression with respect to the different things that are associated with it and like the definition, what it is, maybe some physical aspect, and then hopefully finding some tools to become healthy through the depression journey as we move through this. I want to thank you again for being here at the Mental Health Hope You're Not Alone podcast. Thank you. Bye-bye. If today's episode of Real Stories, Real Struggles, and Real Hope resonated with you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your engagement helps others find this space and feel less alone.